Greetings everyone, and welcome to the 50th LEGO Rewind, where we take another look at old retired LEGO themes. Today, an episode I thought I'd never do. I've flirted with classic space many times over the years, covering it piecemeal while focusing on other spacey themes to give them context, and figuring there wasn't much left to say. But things have changed since 2017, and all those successors had to come from somewhere. The first proto-space sets popped up in the early 70s, a few years before minifigures and classic space as we know it took off. These were more contemporary and realistic, you could say, but they do foreshadow classic space with all that blue and a bit of yellow and gray. The first few proper space sets, minifigs and all, launched in 1978, although it wouldn't hit everywhere until 1979, sorta like Bionicle releasing to test markets in 2000 and having its full launch in 2001. It's not hard to see why generations of LEGO fans remember this era of space. It's a simple but incredibly effective look. In some ways you might not immediately notice. Everyone remembers the blue, gray, and translucent yellow, but it's the placement of these colors that fascinates me. Blue is mostly reserved for outposts or bases that you could at least imagine closing up. Small vehicles without protection are entirely gray, while large spacecraft combine these aesthetics, areas like the bridge and cargo effectively being a blue building slapped on top of a gray wing. Even on grounded structures, the gray elements are more superficial. Good color blocking like this gives things a clear purpose. It isn't all jumbled together like even some of the best later space themes. At first, only astronauts wearing red and white spacesuits were included with the builds, but only a year in, you could get at the time exclusive yellow astronauts in minifig packs. These would start appearing in bigger sets in the early 80s, and eventually black and blue astronauts. Red astronauts are pilots, white ones are explorers, yellow are scientists, blue are security, and black are spies. And you really have to suspend your disbelief with these spacemen, leaving their faces completely exposed on the moon. There's something oddly calming about it. The blackness of space dotted with big friendly stars is easy on the eyes, while the bright foreground lighting and long heavy shadows make it feel like the sun is rising just out of frame. Quiet and mysterious, even a little creepy. It goads you to explore. It feels like a world you could get lost in, but never too far away from another settlement. It's much more peaceful than I'm used to seeing, even in older space lines. I was recently able to acquire an original Galaxy Explorer, box instructions and all, and it's surreal seeing a box number dip into the hundreds as opposed to the 4 or 5 digits I've seen on boxes all my life. The box itself is neat, inviting you to lift the front flap to see what revolutionary pieces you were getting. I have a few boxes that continued this trend into the late 90s, but not beyond that. Building a set this old was an eye-opener for me. I'm so used to sideways construction, beams, pins, and axles holding things together, but things were simpler then. You really did just stack plates and bricks in layers until you had a shape. But while some bits like the thrusters and landing gear are easily knocked off, the structure is shockingly sturdy. If anything, the pieces have contracted over 44 years, making some connections scarily tight, but it is well designed. You know, it's funny how snippy people can be about LEGO's instructions nowadays, with the highlighted edges where you're supposed to lay a piece down, the progress bar on the bottom guiding you along, the occasional explosion of happiness or a character stopping to tell you you're doing a great job. Some adult fans hate all these quality of life touches, say they make building too easy. They'll even complain about each step showing you which pieces you need and how many. But you know what's really funny? That's an old LEGO thing. Yeah, look, they were doing that in the 70s. They just gave up for a while, eventually realized how needlessly confusing that made things, fixed it, and now an entire generation of people may misremember this as something that was never there before. Well, here I am to tell you that the world you knew was a lie. One thing that made early waves special was how they catered to different demographics, the clearest example being the Legoland fleet. The LL-918 Space Cruiser, LL-924 Space Transporter, and LL-928 Galaxy Explorer are essentially the same ship, sharing most of the same features and details, just in different sizes and price ranges. $32 for a Galaxy Explorer might sound like a steal, but that's 1979 money, equal to 134 of today's dollars. So if you couldn't afford a Galaxy Explorer, you could go with a smaller space transporter or cruiser for roughly the same experience. If your allowance didn't cover a 2-seater space scooter, there's a single-seat option. I'm not sure how LEGO could revive this practice today without people calling them lazy, but I'd be all for it personally. This is how most people remember classic space, but in truth, they're only remembering the first couple years. The 80s broke all the rules. We started seeing white creep into smaller vehicles and then take over the larger ones with dark trans blue windows. This would later expand to black and gray builds with green windows, sort of foreshadowing later lines. Starfleet Voyager. There's a name they could not use nowadays. Some sets stuck to the original look, but played around with it. This set cleverly flips the classic colors with the blue housing on the bottom, and here's a smaller exposed build colored like the bigger ships. The FX Star Patroller is my favorite mid-80s design. The blue window ties it all together so nicely. Droids became a big part of the later years, starting strong with a robot command center and downsizing to more domestic types. Meanwhile, in the other direction, things that earlier could have been called sensors or communication devices started to look more like weaponry. The Gamma 5 laser craft is pretty self-explanatory. By the mid-80s, the moon had become a louder, more vibrant, more aggressive place. The last couple years were the loudest and brightest literally, with lights and sound action, and some of the wackiest, most cluttered designs yet. 1987 was the end of classic space. The background was swapped for the grid pattern and bright atmosphere characteristic of many sublines to follow, and the last few sets were released alongside the first wave of Futuron sets. The transition is pretty seamless. At a glance, the two lines look identical. The only way to tell them apart is the minifigs, the Futuron astronauts boasting proper protective visors and zippers. Also that same year came the first Blacktron sets, the first completely new faction signaling Classic Space's expansion into Neo-Classic Space, a more divided, conflict-driven, action-packed frontier. And if we go any further, we loop back around to all the other space themes I've talked about for 6 years. Space Police, Mtron, Blacktron 2, Space Police 2, Ice Planet, and all the rest. I'd say the closest any of those later space lines came to recapturing the spirit of research and exploration of early classic space were Ice Planet and Explorians, each with their own iconic look and feel informed by a similar philosophy. But even after space in general discontinued, there would still be some classic space representation in other lines. Toy 14 was a good year. There was this humble gift with purchase, and the LEGO Ideas Exosuit, which introduced green astronauts, the first new color in 30 years. I guess these could be engineers? These aren't quite the same. The old helmets were very thin and prone to breaking, especially around the chin strap, so modern astronauts have thicker ones. This design is more sleek like a biker helmet, but they would release a retro one with the same increased strength. The exosuit itself is neat, if fiddly. We'd see a more overt homage in the LEGO movie. I've talked about Benny's spaceship before, but now I can show it in person thanks to a friend of the show graciously letting me borrow theirs. Yep, the idiot strikes again. I'll be shipping it back when the episode is finished, though they said I could keep this a limb. Benny's Spaceship Cubed has the modular and transformative features Classic Space is known for, but my favorite touches are Benny's simulated broken chin strap and the LL929, making this the next model in the Legoland fleet after the Galaxy Explorer, though I'm not quite feeling the continuity between these two. The LEGO Movie aesthetic is just being as over-the-top and unorthodox as possible, which makes for a really creative ship, but it is busy. It feels more like one of the tail-end ships like the Cosmic Fleet Voyager, and while I like them, I don't love those more intense, jumbled later ship designs as I do the cleaner early ones. This is a great ship, it's just more neo-classic than classic. Both LEGO movies have a lot of space energy actually, tons of cool spacey designs, the Sistar aliens being among my faves. The sequel represented classic space with Benny's Space Squad, including our first pink astronaut, and a 4+ set with a speeder that captures the feel and functionality of the Galaxy Explorer in a much smaller package. There were a couple other homages here and there, a few more astronaut colors, a baby knot, but 2022 would give us the best classic space rep ever. Behold, the LEGO Icons 2022 Galaxy Explorer, celebrating LEGO's 90th anniversary. Hard to believe what almost a decade of advancements can do, let alone 45 years. Most of the same details are there, just upscaled and more intricate. Taking what used to be one mold or even a print and recreating those shapes with as many as a dozen basic elements. It's slightly sleeker than the original, a pretty complex interior skeleton creating refined, tapered shapes. All the old gimmicks are there, and even a few new ones, like fully retractable landing gear. And those heavier wing-mounted thrusters coming off and being their own little flyers is exactly in the spirit of classic space. And the fun doesn't end there, as this is more of a Creator 3-in-1 style set, with alternate builds recreating the Space Cruiser and Space Transporter. If you buy enough sets to build all three, you're gonna have a lot of leftover pieces. But I'd say it's worth it. Considering how much bigger it is than the original Galaxy Explorer, even with the base plates, at $100, it's still cheaper than the old one's $134. I've slightly modified my classic space fleet, though not enough for a full Nyx mods video. I've given them each different barrel lengths, and I tried to integrate landing gear into the smallest, almost getting away with just a forward strut and a rear one, but decided I preferred it without. They unfortunately did not include the numbers for the smaller two ships, but I did find some custom prints on eBay. Now they really feel authentic. The set also references Bionicle with a monitor showing spacemen finding an empty Toa canister, appropriately huge compared to them. While mainly referencing the beginnings of classic space, it also includes a bit of the final wave, one-to-one the exact same droid design. And appropriately, just like in 1987, this was quickly followed up by a Blacktron set, and both of these ships have each other in their sights. Some are crossing their fingers that this is only the beginning, that we'll soon see similar updates for other old space lines, Ice Planet, M-Tron, etc. But with LEGO recently retiring both translucent colors that made those lines iconic, who knows? I'm sure we'll see something cool if we wait long enough. I mean, 45 years in and classic space, or whatever we call it now, that's still here. We'll see where it is in another almost half century. A lot has happened since I covered Ice Planet, both for the channel and in real life. For instance, I actually have a couple Ice Planet sets now. Yet in some ways, it feels like this show has changed very little. Will LEGO Rewind make it to 100 episodes one day? Will there even be enough new material in my lifetime? Maybe. But wait and see. That's it for today. This was one of the biggest ones I still had to cross off the list that people have wanted forever, but I needed the jolt of inspiration that recent developments have given me. I hope it was worth the wait. Special thanks to the idiot. Again. And thank you for watching 50 episodes of LEGO Rewind. Whether you were there 6 years ago or earlier, or have just discovered the channel and binged this show in the last month, you are LEGO Rewind. To support my work, check out my books on Amazon and itch.io. Planet Rebel Volume 8 just released. There's also my Patreon page where you'll see these videos a week early, your name in the credits, patron-exclusive content, a patron-exclusive Discord server, and if you can afford it, your own LEGO Rewind episode. See you next time with some other LEGO theme. Toodles!
From the farthest reaches of imagination comes a LEGO space set with all kinds of pieces to build all kinds of spacecraft, like this.
I think it should have a big middle part and two little sides that stick out. Yeah, that's it.
My ship should be long, with lots of booster engines. And see, it can even carry things.
Number 928, one of the new LEGO Space series. Each set sold separately. LEGO, a new toy every day.